This time of year, so many people are setting out to live their life just a little bit different than they did last year. And this very often includes a goal to finish the book this calendar year. But unfortunately, as I'm sure you all know, once we get to the third week in January, we are officially in quitter territory. So many people drop their New Year's resolutions before we even hit February, and that's why today I want to talk about 5 habits you can adopt to help support your memoir writing process. Stay tuned. You've been writing your memoir, maybe even for years. You know your material, you know what it means. What's missing isn't the story, it's the structure. And that's why we started the Memoir Method Book Club. Every single month, Emily Thrash, a professional writer and editor, teaches you how to read like a writer by breaking down a published memoir and showing you what it's doing under the surface. Your first session is free. Head over to pageandpodium.com/book club to sign up. All my friends and family know that New Year's Eve is hands down my favorite holiday. I just love the vibe of reflecting on the life that you lived over the past year, but even more so, dreaming so big about the changes that you want to make in the year in front of us. It's so energizing and inspiring to me. I just love it. But what I hate is that we can set out with such good intentions, but life so often is gonna life. And when we set these New Year's resolutions, one of the things that is so common is that even though we try to change this one part of our life that we want to improve, we very often think that we're going to be able to do that change without changing anything else. And unfortunately, this is not true for almost any resolution, but it's certainly not true if you're trying to write your memoir this calendar year. And that's why I thought it would be so helpful to talk about some of the little tweaks, some of the little habits that you can change as you are trying to build up and strengthen this memoir writing muscle that you have. So today what I want to do is I want to cover 5 habits that we are constantly encouraging people within the Memoir Method group program to adopt. Some of these, in fact, are even things that we are asking every single week just to remind folks that these are super, super supportive habits. And even though it always seems like the sitting at the keyboard, hammering away at those keys is the actual productive time, what you know from listening to this channel is that there's a whole lot more that goes into writing your memoir than simply the writing part. So with that, let's dive into these 5 habits. These are all pretty simple to incorporate, and if you can make them just part of your everyday life, they are going to really change the way that you go about writing your memoir. Okay, so with that, the first habit that you can adopt to make sure that you are setting yourself up for success is a big one. It's blocking off your writing time. Now, this is going to look different for everybody, and we have talked pretty recently and will be talking in the near future about some of the ways that you can make your writing time really work for you. But one of the things that I will always suggest is that you need to set a planned writing time rather than just hoping that the writing will happen when you're inspired. And this one trips a lot of people up, especially when we come to the New Year's resolution time, because what very often happens is that in the first few chapters of your writing process, now, of course, we're assuming you've already done development, but if you're in the writing part, those first few chapters often feel really exciting. And at that point, we don't really need the same types of scaffolds and supports that we need down the line when the writing starts to feel a little bit more like a drag, sometimes a little bit more obligatory, and sometimes just a little bit more difficult. So the thing that we can do here is even when we don't need that extra scaffold and support, even when the writing comes so naturally and easily to us, we can still play out the motions of having that blocked off writing time. And what that does is let our brains, our bodies, but also the people around us know that we have this intention of writing at this particular time. And very often, when we do make that intention clear, again, both to ourselves and to those around us, it's actually not as hard to defend that time. The problem is we want to kind of defend the time, but also let other things keep going the way they always have been. Unfortunately, both things are going to have to change. Now, let me kind of briefly share the way that I block off my writing time. This is going to be a mileage may vary. Everybody is going to do this a little bit differently, and whatever works for you is the way that you should do it. But the way that I have been approaching my memoir in kind of these last couple of months is that I have a standing coffee date with my best friend every single Sunday. And as part of that, I built in some writing time. So every single Sunday, I write a chapter. Now, I have been doing this a long time. I'm a professional writer. I'm a pretty quick chapter writer. So I can usually do this in a few hours. I can get a chapter draft down. So what I've been doing then is arriving at our coffee shop a little bit early. I get started on the chapter. We have our coffee. And then if I need to pick up a little bit more time afterwards, then she heads home. I stay at the coffee shop until I'm finished. Now, one thing that I do want to mention is that as you are setting out the way that you want to block off this time, the way you want to commit that time to your writing, one thing to keep in mind is you may not get it right the first time. And what I mean by that is sometimes we will look at our calendar, think that X and Y and Z times look great for our writing process, but then when we get in there, actually they're not. Actually, we forgot that it takes us 45 minutes instead of a half hour to get across town to our kids' school. Or actually, we forgot that that is a time of day when we're always needing to support our partner, or that is a time of day when sometimes work gets a little bit hairy. Whatever it may be, it's really, really common to choose a time to block off only to find pretty quickly, usually, that it actually isn't going to work as well as you thought. And this, in fact, is something that I experienced as I was blocking my time off. When I first kicked off this memoir, I really felt really certain that the way I was going to do it was what I just described, that I would be able to just go to the coffee shop and write. Well, wouldn't you know it, a couple of weeks into this sort of pattern that I was trying to set up, my best friend was out of town for the weekend. She and her husband had taken a little trip. So she had texted me and said, I won't be able to meet you this week. But she had forgotten to let me know kind of in advance. So that text came on Sunday morning. Well, you know what? I am a very strong person. I am very dedicated to my writing process. But that was enough to keep me in bed, just lazying around drinking coffee at my house. So that week, I didn't write a chapter. And here is where I want you to hear me. That is okay. That does not mean that I am a failure, and it doesn't even mean that that writing time won't work. It just means I've got to look at what happened and figure out how I can tweak or adjust that block in a way that's going to solve that problem. So in this case, what I did was I decided that I would just go to the coffee shop pretty early, actually. So even when sometimes we will kind of cancel on the day of, my friend and I, but even when that happens, now I'm already at the coffee shop if she texts and cancels. And that means that since I'm at the coffee shop already, I stay, I do my chapter, and then I go home. This is a really simple little tweak, but I'm telling you, this is what is going to make the difference for you, is if you not only can block off your time, but then be really flexible about it. Give yourself the grace to realize that this is a habit. You're gonna have to refine it, hone it, dial it in until it really fits very, very neatly into your life. Okay, so that is the first habit, probably the most obvious. The second one, I think, is a little bit more interesting and one that I do find people overlook, even though it is so, so helpful. And that is, if you are writing a memoir, you need to be reading memoirs. Now, one of the things that I do sometimes hear is a little bit of resistance to this idea of reading. Sometimes people are really hesitant to read other memoirs while they're writing their memoir because they're afraid that they're going to be pulling things out of that author's voice and unintentionally putting it into their book. Of course, this could happen, but one of the things that we suggest in the Memoir Method especially is that we are asking people actually every single week what they're reading. And oftentimes we will kind of be watching to see and make sure that it's not kind of the same exact author. It's not the same exact type of book every week. Because one of the things that will happen is when you are writing a book and reading books of that same genre, you are not copying them. right? You are not reading those books to try to figure out exactly what they did and then replicate it on the page. But rather, what you are looking for are the kind of common elements that make a memoir enjoyable to read. So these are things like structure, internal chapter flow, what kinds of reflections and contexts are given, and how those are given. You're looking for how are the scenes written, and this will vary from memoir to memoir. You're looking at kind of all of these little pieces that when we put them all together, they actually don't tell us exactly how to write the book. They just give us more of a sense of the framework. And of course, you all know from watching this channel, there are frameworks that work well in memoir, right? Ours is called the Memoir Method. It helps you kind of set out your narrative arc so that it grows, it's inspirational, goes to that really exciting climax. It feels like you're reading fiction, and it gives you all the space that you need to play around with your unique contribution, with your voice, with your story, with the message you want to get across. So that is what we're doing when we are reading memoir to write our memoir. We're not copying, we're not kind of trying to figure out a cookie cutter that we can just project onto our book. Rather, what we're doing is we're kind of looking at what the commonalities of the genre are. And I tell you those all the time, but there's something so powerful about not just looking at them by someone guiding you through it, but that also you yourself are in there reading, decoding. And this is the perfect opportunity. I want to make a little plug. So Page and Podium has a group called the Book Club. Now we are just getting this started, just getting this launched. So you are not too late to join us. But every single month, we will be going through a memoir that we'll choose as a group. We'll let you know in advance so that you can read that book. And then we will spend about an hour going through the lessons of that book. What are some of those structural pieces? Where do you see things that you like? Where do you see things that you don't like? And all of this will be led by our very own Emily Thrash. She has an MFA in both fiction and a concentration in narrative nonfiction. She is such an expert in this kind of thing, and she is so good at guiding you through what is making that book work and what might not be making that book work. So join us for that. You can head over to pageandpodium.com/bookclub, add your name to our list, and we will keep you in the loop of not only which books we'll be reading, but of course the times, dates, and that kind of thing for the book club. So plug aside, I do want to make sure that you're also getting this habit tip. When you are reading, it is giving your brain kind of a different type of practice in how words go together to form our stories and our messages. And it is really, really important that that is a habit that you keep up as you are writing your memoir, even if you're choosing things that are not in the exact kind of genre or subgenre that you're writing in. Really just getting that reading in, reading, as we say, like a writer, to kind of pick up what are the kind of structural beats, what's the flow, what's the content. That is going to be so, so useful to keeping you moving forward and to helping you really tap into your own intuition about what you want your book specifically to be. Okay, so second tip, read like a writer. And our third, I want you to think about a journaling practice. Now, I talk a lot about journaling. Journaling is something that I think is so important to all of us, not only for our writing process, although absolutely yes, but also just for our general mental health, for our ability to kind of look at the world and make sense of it in a way that's really true and honest to ourselves. Just think journaling can be such a helpful practice. And when you're working on a memoir, this goes double, triple, quadruple. One of the things that will happen as you are writing through this memoir is you will start to see experiences you have been through in different ways. There is just something about telling the whole story in one long string, one narrative, that is going to help you place different pieces of that narrative in conversation with each other. And when we do that, we get a whole new appreciation for what our life means. But the difficult thing about this is very often we'll have those kind of realizations, but they won't be clear to us. We'll kind of feel that there's something there. Maybe we can sense that there was a connection between this event and this event, but sometimes it's really difficult to articulate. If you have an ongoing journaling practice, you have a ready-made container to use to work through some of those things. And as you are journaling, one of the things that you will inevitably find is that allowing yourself not only in your writing practice to write things as scenes, as context, as reflection, but also to be writing it in a free-form way in your journal where you're not holding yourself to a particular structure. Probably you're not even holding yourself to a particular topic. And those two things fit together so beautifully. Both of them make the other stronger. And when you are journaling through your memoir, one of the beautiful things that happens is you will start to really see the synergy of those two types of writing in the way you're thinking about what goes on your written page. When we are working through some of these reflections just in our head, oftentimes we're not able to stretch them as far as we need to. So this is such an important tip, and I know you'll benefit in so many ways if you can pick up a journaling practice. For writers, I very often will recommend that you do what's called morning pages. This I'm borrowing from The Artist's Way, a very famous workbook that takes you through kind of getting rid of your creativity blocks. Highly recommend, although it is a big chunk to bite off. But in the morning pages segment of The Artist's Way, all the author is recommending that we do is first thing in the morning, write 3 pages. She is very clear. Julie Cameron is the author, by the way. She is very clear that you should not be reading back through those pages. And her point here is that she doesn't want you critiquing them. You can certainly read back to kind of get ideas for your writing. But the good thing about morning pages, it's just 3 pages. You can do that. That doesn't take you that much time. And since you aren't trying to kind of go back through and mine them, you should be able to kind of get in the habit of just dumping those first morning thoughts out onto the page and moving on, and you will still have all of that gold on the page that you can revisit later if you need to come back to it. Okay, so the third tip, we want you to start a journaling practice. It really is going to be such a game changer. Okay, the fourth habit, this is a kind of a trickier one because we've got to get into the writing habit before we can implement it, but it's really helpful. And that is that I want you to get in the habit of, before you end a writing session, planning the next one. So I already mentioned to you that my writing practice at this moment, this is just writing for myself, of course, not our client writing, but that my writing practice right now is just 1 day a week. I just use Sunday mornings, and that really is all the time that I have to give. That's the time that feels really good to me. But anytime you have your writing practice set up where you have a week, even 3-4 days between sessions, the really challenging part of keeping that habit up is that every time you sit down for a new session, you've got to figure out where you were. So often this is the part where our writing session gets derailed, because this will often involve, for instance, reading back through the last chapter you wrote, which can very easily spiral into an editing session rather than a new writing session. Instead, what I want you to do is really clearly plan out what the next session is while you're still in the mindset. So for me, in my writing practice right now, I will go through, say, chapter 5. I write chapter 5, I get that whole thing drafted on that Sunday morning. But before I leave that coffee shop, I will go into my file that will be the chapter 6 file, and I will go ahead and look through what is the material, what did my outline say that I was writing here, how do I think this is going to flow best, and I will make myself a chapter outline with any notes that I think are going to be helpful once I get back to the writing project. I cannot tell you how useful this is, because very often I will be driving to the coffee shop thinking to myself, what chapter am I even writing today? I really don't have any memory of what the context is where I left off the last time. So every single time, I am so grateful to my past self for putting down this outline so that I know exactly where to start. I don't have to spend a bunch of time that either feels kind of frustrating, like you can't really get a start, or that feels like, or ends up being, a waste of time. I'm really able to efficiently get right into that new writing session. This is such a game changer. It's not going to take you more than 5-10 minutes, and it will make your next session so much more efficient than 5 to 10 minutes would seem like it could. Okay, number 4 is we are going to plan our next writing session at our current writing session. And our last habit, habit number 5, I want to remind you that since you will need to be talking about this book at some point as part of the promotion process, way down the line, but it's coming, I want you to get in the habit of talking about your book. Now, there's a couple different ways you can do this that are going to be really, really helpful to keeping this writing momentum going. The first way that I want you to talk about your book is I want you to just simply tell people that you're writing a book. When you talk about writing a book, something happens in your kind of identity, something happens in your core, where the more you tell people you're writing a book, the more you will get these kind of excited, surprised kind of reactions from friends, family, acquaintances. And the more you get that, the more you can feel that this writing agenda, that this project you're doing is real. It is something you can do because it's something you are doing. So I want you to first of all get in the habit of talking about the fact that you're writing a book. People are always curious about what that process is like. So you have tons of material here. Even when you're on the first or second chapter, you've got tons to talk about. How did you plan the development? What kind of outlining did you do? How are you figuring out times of your day and your week to write? All this process stuff, people think it's so interesting. So let that out. I promise it's going to feel really good. And the second way you can build this habit is I also want you to talk about the book itself. Now, this is something that came up a few weeks ago in our Memoir Method group where we work with women who are writing their first memoirs. One of our members was talking about how she had been talking about the process. She had been sharing with friends that she was writing a book. Now, her particular story is quite heavy. There is a really inspiring payoff in it in terms of kind of how she feels her identity has shifted, the things that she has learned through what she's been through. But it's a pretty traumatic story. And one of the things that she was talking about is that people will kind of ask her and she'll, oh yeah, I'm working on my book. And inevitably someone will say, oh, well, what's it about? And she said she feels like such a downer when she has to tell them. But as we kind of talked about it, she said something that I think is so true and such good advice. I wanted to share it with you. She said, I got to figure out how to talk about it eventually, right? True, you do. And that's why I want you to go ahead and start that habit now. You won't have as much to say at this point in the writing process as you will when you've got that finalized book. That just is the way it goes. But the sooner you start to talk about the topics, the subject matter of your book, the more adept you will be, the more skilled and comfortable you will be when you get to that promotion stage. So let's start that habit now. It is not only going to keep you motivated because it's going to feel really good, it also is going to serve you in terms of things that you actually have to do to make the book sell later. Okay, I hope these have been helpful as you are going into this new year. Know that yes, you can finish this book. Yes, in this calendar year. If you'd like some support, ongoing accountability, if you'd like some internal trainings that we don't share all of this on the podcast, some of it is paywalled in our group. And if you would just like to have some community around you that understands what it's like to be writing a memoir, I want to invite you to apply to the Memoir Method. This program is only for women, but it is structured to make sure that you can at least get the vast majority of your first draft finished within that 9-month time period that the program lasts. But you also get lifetime access to a lot of things, including all of the training materials, our monthly workshops to refine your voice, and of course, our ongoing app where you are able to check in, share your progress. We love hearing from our current members and our alums. Everybody is in there just talking about this same process that can feel so lonely unless you have a community who really gets it. So if that's interesting to you, head over to pageandpodium.com/memoir-method. You can learn more about the program and click over to that red contact button when you're ready to apply. For now, I'm so excited to hear about how this new plan to move forward with your writing is going for you. Reach out if you have enjoyed this episode, shoot me an email. You can also like, rate, review, subscribe. We really, really appreciate that. It helps us reach more people who need this information. So if you're willing to do that, we would be forever grateful. And otherwise, I hope your writing is going so well. And until next time, happy writing. You know that feeling when a book just hits you? Not because the story is wild, but because it's shaped so intentionally that it almost makes you rethink your own story. You finish that last page and think, how did they do that? The structure, the honesty, the clarity. There's something under the surface that you just can't put your finger on. And the reason is, unless someone shows you how memoirs actually work, it's hard to translate that inspiration into your own writing. And that's exactly why we created the Memoir Method Monthly Book Club. If you want to join Emily Thrash every single month to dig into an exemplary memoir and figure out what's happening under the surface, head over to pageandpodium.com/book club. Your first month is free, and we can't wait to welcome you to the group.